Shalom Aleichem, beautiful, heilige, wonderful Chavras, the Chazda Hashem. Baruch Hashem, Purim has passed, and we have started our joyful inquiry about Pesach. And we're building out here this idea over the next several weeks, the next month, of really trying to delve into an idea here that we will try to show all the way through in what we are sharing. And it's the idea about healing, about this nakuda of healing, and words that we really have to excavate, which unfortunately I don't know if we're going to have full time to do it, but words such as trauma and trauma release and micro, macro blockages. And we're really trying to recognize that Yiddishkeit, on one hand, is very much about the rules, Olam Haba, the purpose-driven reality. Yet that's on the backdrop of having a experience here that's a good experience to the best of our ability. And when that experience is met with challenge, that we can hold it, and having the ability to cultivate what we call Yishuv Hadas and Menuchas HaNefesh and Tikkun Hamidais, and understanding experientially Devekus, Emunah and Bitachon, and to recognize that this is really important. And when we're speaking about Pesach, maybe we can suggest, and hopefully it may become clearer, I don't know, it depends on how much time we have to dedicate to these meetings. But really, when we're speaking about the world of Pesach, it's a world of Das meeting Nefesh. It's a world where the Das, consciousness, the true you, which hopefully we will excavate a little bit today, it gives us the ability to know how we work, recognize our own mechanisms and machinery, and become the mechanic over our own machinery. And to remind ourselves, for example, whether we're speaking about Nefesh HaChaim, and what we want is for our Naran, Neshama, Ruach, Nefesh, and the other soul parts to be integrated and aligned, to create a reality, a healthy self that, based on the pasuk, from my flesh in Eov, I will experience Hashem. And as we mentioned, the Grand Mishlei, a few different places about the Evorim will come to the Lev, will come to Das and say, we are one. It's a sign of healing. Vulnerability, the tzaddikim are ruim, they're vulnerable. The chachamim, they are vulnerable. That means they feel safe within themselves. And to recognize the relationship, Grand Mishlei 19.2, the Gra explains that the nefesh is atbash is tov, that the das without the nefesh is no good, and the das with the nefesh, this is tov. And Likutei Maharan, in the second part, Yud, that a lack of Yishva Das distances us from the source, distances us from the cause of all causes. And we spoke about the Metzei Yam and this healing process of Am Yisrael in Mitzrayim and then working their way out, healing, becoming Balei Das in order to makabel the Torah. And who was it that was makabel the Torah? Balei Das. And we quoted several different places, told us Yankov Yosef in Vayishlach, where we're told, what's Golus Mitzrayim? Golus Mitzrayim happened because there was enslavement of Das. They became enslaved. Their Das became enslaved. From a more technical perspective, their Das fell into the Nefesh. They lacked proper, healthy Das. And what is this? The deep knowing and awareness that there is the cause of all causes, and if we surrender to the cause of all causes, everything appears different. And the Toldos Yankov Yosef there in Vayishlach writes that it's presence, it's the knowing there's a creation and recreation of reality at every moment. And Moshe Rabbeinu, who embodies the qualities of Das, came along and reminded us that we are Balei Das, and there's a hitzchadshus every single moment. And this is something very important to think about. that exile is deeply related to the loss of das, and Geula, redemption, is to do with das. You have, for example, told us Yankov Yosef Parshas Lech Lecha that when we're speaking about das, the Baal Shem Tov taught it's the secret of Olam Haba and the resurrection of the dead. And in Parshas Lech Lecha further, we're told there that, as we know, das is Ruach HaKodesh. It's the ability to experience deep insight. Deep insight. There's a lot to talk about. This is based on Shemos 31:1, where Rashi says this explicitly. So, when we're speaking about this nakuda of healing, we want to explore das and recognize what das is and work towards it. And what we can suggest is that the journey of the Haggadah is a journey of cultivating consciousness and understanding our nefesh and having the ability to rewrite Be'ezras Hashem. We'll see what happens. But first of all, das, a term rich in mainstream meaning, mainstream texts and avodah as well as mystical tradition. It's mamash. It's there throughout all our text. It refers to awareness, to clarity. It unites, so to speak, the awareness and wisdom. This nakuda of das is the bridge between the neshama and the nefesh, as the Nefesh HaChaim brings. And what's really important to understand are the words of the Medrash and the words of the Zohar and the Arizal. The Medrash Rabbah and Shemos Rabbah, Beis, Ois, Vav, as well as the Zohar Chelek Aleph, page Reish Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, and the Arizal in Shara Psukim Vaychi teaches us something so important. That the first Redeemer, Moshe Rabbeinu, is the first Redeemer. And he is Das. He brought Das to the nation and created a nation of Balei Das, the first Redeemer. Moshe Das, the final Redeemer. The final Redeemer will as well hold the same Nakuda of Das. So the first Redeemer and the last Redeemer will bring around a experience for us to become Balei Das once again, to be given direction and to be given definition, to allow ourselves to come beyond our thoughts, feelings and physical sensations. And this is something which can be achieved. There's a beautiful theme in the worlds of Rav Ashlag, and some of us, when we learnt Rav Ashlag on the Zohar, the Hagdama of the Zohar and other places, Rav Ashlag brings this time and time again, that there are 4 psychological and psycho-spiritual steps. The first is receiving to receive, like a little child receives to receive. Then there's a next level of maturity, which is giving to receive. So a child, what happens with a child? They do something in order to receive. So they'll clean their room for a sweet. They'll do their homework for a treat. Excuse me. And this nakuda is a very important nakuda, giving, receiving to receive and giving to receive. That's part of the human experience. Then we've got giving to give, where a person can feel good within themselves to give. And when they give, they feel good that they gave. They don't need something from the outside world in order to please that feeling. And then you've got another darga called receiving to give. Receiving to give is when I could become a kli in mamash. I could become a kli, I'm in love with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I could become a kli just to give. And there's different experiential definitions, but what we can suggest is that we all can achieve the first 3. We can all achieve the first 3. 4th one's more difficult, but everyone seems to have the availability as a child. It seems to be something real where we are receiving to receive. And then giving or receiving, giving to receive. A lot of people do that. And unfortunately in people's Yiddishkeit they seem to do that. That's the Yiddishkeit of rules, and that's the Yiddishkeit of the do's and the don'ts. So people do mitzvahs to get the chelik in olam haba. The nakuda, though, that there is room for that, but everybody could reach a darga. And imagine a world where this is really, people are experiencing this. They're centered and they're present, and they can give to give. They can give. That this is a high darga within itself. To give, it's a high darga, and through the cultivation of awareness and das, we can achieve that. Excuse me. What I'd like to do is spend a couple of minutes just defining some of the qualities of das. And it's, I know it's a reminder because we have gone through this before. It's a reminder, and it's important to remind ourselves of this. So based on Pesukim, we have 3 layers and definitions of das. And what we can suggest is as following. The essence of das, consciousness, awareness, permeates these various realms. So first of all, das is in witness. We can witness, we can observe. So the Torah tells us in Bereshis, Kaf Daled, Kaf Aleph. And the man wondered about her, remaining silent, to know, ladas, whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether the Lord has made his journey successful or not. This is speaking about when Eliezer was looking for a girl for Yitzchak, and he uses the word ladas. Onkelos translates this moment of Eliezer's experience as observation. He was observing, he was witnessing, he was noticing. In the word das is aid, witness, as one of conscious awareness. Conscious awareness, revealing das as a state of presence and awareness. The word das, as we said, itself is aid, witness. And we similarly find in Devarim 19 verse 4 that a lack of das, a lack of das is unawareness. It corresponds to unawareness, as seen in the case when one who unfortunately kills somebody unintentionally and must flee to a city of refuge. So we have das as in witnessing. Our first shift of consciousness, awareness, das, we can witness. You are the witness. I am the witness. We want to build towards that. As you know, in our conversations, we've said, if you are aware of it, you are not it. So this leads to the second shift of das. Das also reflects separation and distinguishing. Rashi and Targum on Shoftim in the 8th Perek, 16th verse shares this, where das connotes distinction. If there is no das, how can one make havdalah, separation, which is found in the Gemara Yerushalmi Brachos, 5th chapter. So we have this dual aspect of das, awareness and separation. And this parallels the fundamental teaching of the Baal Shem Tov in Kesef Shem Tov Kaf Chet Bet, Hachnan Havdalah. The fact is, if we are Isaac, if we reach a darga of Hachnan Havdalah, the principle of Hachna is subjugation and Havdalah is separation, by definition we then move into the world of Hamtaka. The natural ability to pull back and observe. When we can create that distance and become that little bit separate through observation, already there's a hamtaka, there's a healing on whatever level. So again, we have these dimensions of das, which is witnessing, observation, and das as in separation. There's another nakuda of das as well, where we're told Adam and Chava, what's this nakuda of das in Bereshis? That Adam and Chava, Adam knew Chava. Adam knew Chava. What that is experienced as, experientially, is connection. So we can be aware of something, and by definition we are separated from it. As well, we can connect to something. These are the 3 experiences of consciousness. So what that looks like is that I could be, which is called das tachton pnimi, I could be self-aware. I could be aware of my thoughts. I could be aware of my feelings and my physical sensations. That's das tachton pnimi, and das tachton chitzoni is I could be aware of that which is outside of me. I could be aware of the environment I'm currently in. So let's start with das tachton chitzoni. I'd like you just to stop for a moment and look around. Look at the space you are occupying right now. Look around. Notice what's around you. Notice the lighting. Look around and notice the objects that are in the space that you occupy. Notice the colors. Notice how things are placed. Notice. And I'm going to throw in another word, non-judgmentally. Non-judgmentally notice. Das tachton chitzoni. Through you noticing, you are entering a state of das. Das tachton pnimi, you can just ask, what am I feeling right now in my body? Just notice, non-judgmentally, what am I feeling in my body? Das tachton pnimi, what feelings am I feeling right now? And you can even go a step further and you can ask yourself, what am I thinking right now if you're thinking something? What am I thinking? And we can even go more into the qualities of our thoughts. Our thoughts share themselves as imagery and sound. They are the pictures we see in our head, and they are the internal dialogue and voices we hear. And this is our first step, at least in defining the richness of what we label in our tradition as das, consciousness, awareness. And this is the shift between kaitzer ruach. So when Bnei Israel were in Mitzrayim, they were in a state of what's called kaitzer ruach. They were in a meichin dekatnus, constricted state. What is that? Is that they were not doing what we've just done. They were absorbed in their experience. And through being absorbed in their experience, it magnifies everything tremendously. It magnifies everything. When we have the availability to cultivate the elevation and the expansion of our awareness, and when we create some distance between myself, the truer self, and my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations, then what that lens is healing. Changes everything. And it's an amazing reality that if we look, for example, in the Zohar, in the second chelek of the Zohar, page 177a, and as well in Derech Mitzvah by the Tzemach Tzedek. So he writes in Hamoinas Elokus base that when we're speaking about das, when we're speaking about awareness and consciousness, das is the key to our emotions. Das is the key to all our experiences that are going on within the nefesh. And when we're speaking about this reality that you and I, we have the availability with direction. We have the availability with definition to foster a different way of living. And as we said, in regards to Pesach and in regards to the Mitzrayim experience, it is a shifting from kaitzer ruach to becoming balei das, and then from balei das to receive the Torah. And it's fascinating because even in our language of Torah, we have this beautiful experiential definition brought by the Musa world. I first heard this from Rabbi Gerzi, he heard this from his brother-in-law in the name of his father. His brother-in-law was Rav Volbe. in the name of his father, Rabbi Gerzi. And that is, when we were in Mitzrayim, we were locked in our Nefesh HaBahami. We were locked within our Nefesh HaBahami, and the experience of the Das being enveloped in the Nefesh is this Nakuda of Kaitzer Ruach. Kaitzer Ruach is where the trigger and reaction, the stimulus and the response are touching. It's where the Hisairus and Dachav are touching. So a person thinks something and feels it so deeply. The pain, the stress, the anxiety. And it is them, they are it. And then the moment we can make this shift, as we said, the Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the Bechina of Das, he's Das, as it says in Shemais Rabbah, Beis Ois Vav, and the Zoya, page 253, in the Arizal Sharap Psukim, that Moshe, who is Das, the first original Redeemer, he comes to the nation. He comes to them. And he awakens the Das within the nation. They start to become Balei Das, so they shift from the Nefesh HaBahami, from being trapped within the Nefesh HaBahami, and they come to a place, a starting place of Das. They start to become aware, whoa, Das Tachton Chitzoni, they look around, wow. And then Das Tachton Pnimi, they become self-aware, wow. And then from there they cry out to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Until then they couldn't cry out, they didn't even cry out. It's only after they awaken the Das did they realize how things are right now, they can cry out. And through this awakening of Das, things start to change radically. And the Moshe, who was the first Redeemer, Nakuda of Das, he gave the availability for Bnei Yisrael to start to make a shift from the world of Nefesh, from the world of the Maisa, the Behemoth, the Nefesh HaBahami, to what we now call Adam. Adam is where there is a gap between the stimulus and response. Adam could be aware of that. Adam can get into a state where they could be aware of Das Tachton Chitzoni as well as Das Tachton Pnimi. The world of Adam is the one that can be aware of a feeling, and then there's a gap, and they can ask, actually, how do I want to relate to this situation at hand? They could start to hold what's going on. And then as they develop, they come out of Mitzrayim and they go through the desert, Adam. Bnei Yisrael becomes Bnei Adam. And then through becoming Bnei Adam, where they then have really created, and at times they fell, at times the Das fell within the Nefesh and became enveloped within the Nefesh in an unhealthy way. There's times where the Das fell in the Nefesh in a healthy way. We want that. But there's times where we are in a situation where our consciousness becomes enveloped in our Nefesh in an unhealthy way. But Baruch Hashem, more or less, we started to grow and grow and grow, became Adam. And what's the experience of Adam? There's a gap between the stimulus and the response. There's a gap between the Hisairus and the Dachav. There's a space between the trigger and reaction. I can be aware of that. Then, when I come to receive the Torah, I can become what we call B'nai Torah. B'nai Torah is in this gap. What do I choose to put in this gap? If I remain an Adam, I could put in sociological norms in this gap. But the ultimate wanting, the ultimate invitation is that Ben Torah, B'nai Torah, we can put Hashem in this gap. We could put Torah in this gap, a pasuk, a halacha. I could be godliness. I could be aware of godliness in my life. Again, Yishuv Das. I experience more Yishuv Das, the Nefesh. Then there's the Das. Das is above the Nefesh. I can experience a greater availability. There is a greater availability to become a Bal Das, Yishuv Hadas. Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid hishtavas. In a state of Das, I could non-judgmentally observe that which is going on within the Nefesh. Adam can non-judgmentally observe. Adam could be a being who can hold anything and everything that's going on. The quality of my Das determines how I can meet any experience. Shifting out of Kaitzer Ruach and the trauma, the victimized self, moving into a space of Adam, becoming the hero of my story, recognizing my biography is not my destiny. As we said from the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, in a state of Das I'm present. And reality is recreating from moment to moment. Wow, what a gift. The greatest present is the presence. What a gift, what a gift. My biography is not my destiny. I can start to heal, moving from Kaitza Ruach, moving from being trapped in my nefesh, from Metzer Yam to the world of what? Adam. To the world of Das, Yishuv Hadas, Archavas Hadas. I can move into a space of Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. Everything is a communication. And in a state of Das, I can work on becoming more positive. I can work on having gratitude. Rabbeinu Shalom. Yes, this is uncomfortable. And this is an opportunity for healing. This is an opportunity for me to shine my light more and more into the world because I matter. How do I know I matter? Because you got me up in the morning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I live differently from a place of Das. I live differently from a place of being a Ben Torah. So when we're speaking about this nakuda of receiving the Torah, we became B'nai Torah. In this gap, I choose and choose again to put in Torah. And the nakuda of Das, as we said, from the Zohar, the Tzemach Tzedek, it's the starting place. It's the key to awakening and connecting to my midos, to my emotions. That availability is there for me. And it's good for me. And it helps open up new possibilities. Unbelievable possibilities. And it's all a gift. I've become more aware of Hashkacha Pratis. And the Hashkacha Pratis, if you look in some of the Sfarim, not to go into it now, but one of the first stages of Ruach HaKodesh is synchronicity. It's presence and synchronicity. Because I'm more present. And because I realize my biography is not my destiny, where I've come from until now is not my destiny. I can become aware of my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. I could listen to the baskoil, like Avram Avinu listened to the baskoil, because he was in a state of das, and he had the ability to cultivate a listening to his neshama. So too, Yisroi, Vayishma Yisroi, he heard the baskoil, because he was present and he was listening. So too, the shift from Kaitza Ruach, coming to the world of Adam, coming to the world of B'nai Torah. When a person is trapped in their nefesh in an unhealthy way, then they can become more aware, they can develop their awareness. I can observe and separate. And I start to connect to life's real experiences in a healthy way. And I become that Ben Torah, that, men or women, anybody and everybody. We start to heal. And from that healing, I could come to a place of being B'nai Torah. That in that gap, I could drop in Hashem. I can allow Hashem in Yishuv Adas. I then can become more and more aware of the baskol that's always being called out each and every day. And it's just think about it, Chevra. The importance of cultivating awareness and consciousness. The ability to increase our self-knowledge. Awareness leads to self-knowledge. When we are conscious of our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations and those patterns, we begin to understand life differently. I'm always relating to my thinking, feeling, and physical sensations in the present moment. I shift from Kaitza Ruach, from the Behema to the world of Adam. And then when that happens, mindful choices with Das, we could move from one behavior to another behavior with mindful choices. These shifts allow us to consciously decide how we respond to life in general and specifically to challenges. And through this, the transformation that occurs, this deep state of consciousness enables us to transform, to become something else. The transformation of limiting beliefs and narratives, we become empowered. We can become the hero of our story, thus fostering and sustaining a sense of freedom. And this nakud is so important, Chevra. This nakud is so important. In the spirit of Pesach, which we are celebrating, that which happened from a historical perspective, we're invited to journey into our own Yetziat Mitzrayim, from the Metzer Yam, from the Kaitzer Ruach, from the hurt, the shame, the guilt, the anxiety, which is all coming from my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. I can learn to separate Hachnan Havdalah. And eventually I can hold with compassion. I can give the space, Rechem, Rachamim, Rechem. And Rabbi Nachman says in Lukutei Maran, Kaf Hey, that I have to hold my experiences. I have to hold my experiences with Rachamim. The Basar Aguf with Rachamim. And through that I produce and I can start to foster healing. Cultivating Das is a reminder that the first step of internal freedom is the shift that needs to occur, and through the shift it's a catalyst for change and transformation. And Chevra, it is available to us. It's available to us. And my wanting and the Torah's wanting is to realize how real this is. And this is how we open up to Ruach HaKodesh. This is how we open up to Nevuah. That the Chachmei HaAvodah gave us this brilliant, simple and at times sophisticated approach to self-understanding. And the first level of Das, as we spoke about, the three qualities: observation, separation, and learning to connect properly to our experiences. Realizing that our journey from the world of Mitzrayim to the world of Kabbalah Torah is one which is deeply connected to becoming more Balei Das. Moshe Rabbeinu, the first leader, the first redeemer, came and shared Das with us. We became more Balei Das. And then as we are in the exile, it's to awaken this, because the final Redeemer is the one that shares Das with us. To get into that state, which is healing. The availability to become aware and to realize that the key to all our midos starts with becoming a Baldas, recognizing that there's Das Tachtoin Chitzoni, spatial awareness. There's Das Tachtoin Pnimi. I can become aware of that which is going on inside of me, which we call our narrative. I can become aware of my narrative. I can become aware of my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. I can become aware of my own internal storyline. I can become aware of my expectations and my assumptions in the present moment. I can become aware of, look, that has come up to share itself with me. Wow, hi, how you doing? I can learn to separate and become more objective and hold what's coming up. The Musas Farim say that when a thought comes up, it's like a little child wanting your attention. And you can give it healthy attention. At times, holding it lovingly, giving it space. Rachamim, giving it room to be and express itself while you listen and you hold it. And this is part of the birur process, tikkunim. This is part of birur netzosis kedusha. When a thought comes up, it's wanting a fixing. When a feeling comes up, it's wanting a beautification, it's wanting a fixing, it's wanting to be held. But when Das is in the nefesh, when I believe I my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations, wow, I could be so nasty and critical upon myself and others. But when I make this shift of realizing, a Baldas is somebody who is a birur netzosis kedusha vacuum cleaner. Every interaction, I'm healing. Tashuv He is returning to the 5 parts of the soul. Alignment, healing. Where, as we said, as we heal, the natural consequence of healing, I become more present. And through becoming more present, I become more loving. And through becoming more loving, there's greater achdus in the world. It's a glorious reality. And as we grow, as we develop, the partitions of unhealthy separation can melt away to give room for wondrous relationship. Humility, love, respect, dignity, keeping our eye on the goal. To be that vehicle of love and hope, to be that beacon of goodness in the world. And that rewriting of our own narrative can only come from when we start our journey of Das, awareness and consciousness. Okay, Chevra, I've spoken for a long time already. What we will do now is we'll do a recap, and we will then break up into our partners and we'll talk and journal and open up and see what comes up from now. Next time we meet, we will go more into the Nakuda of Das and how it works and some of the mechanisms. We'll do Habata. We'll open that up and share that and speak about narrative and narrative Haggadah, and we'll see maybe even the next time will be the last session, or we'll have 2 more sessions. We'll figure out what goes on. Okay, beautiful Chevra, L'chaim Tovim U'Shalom, and let's now move on to our next section.